Welcome, I am 𝐸𝐬𝐸 and your host for Keep Traveling Your African Vacation, the only podcast which brings you insightful information in the African tourism industry by real tourism professionals. Today we have another great episode to bring you, and I have the pleasure of introducing Doug Rattray, who's the Managing Director at Fugitives Drift Lodge and Guesthouse. Doug, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you on board. Let's start off, Doug, with people that are not familiar with where you are. Can you tell us where you are geographically?
As the name suggests, we're located at the Fugitive Drift, which is a cultural heritage site, slap bang in between the battlefields of Isandlwana and Rorke Drift. We're about 64 kilometers outside of Dundee and about 4.5 hours drive inland from Durban and the heartlands of the Anglo-Zulu War battlefields.
Okay. And tell me, what is a normal day for you like at the property?
Normal is a fantastic term. As the old expression goes, you cannot call yourself a guide in Africa unless you've watched the sunset from underneath a Land Rover. Much like many of the others in our little group of African Safari Collective, we actually live on site. We are guides, we are the plumbers, we are the electricians, we are the anti-poaching unit, we are the fence builders, the road builders. For our guests in particular, the average day obviously starts depending on the itinerary in terms of how long they're staying with us. But typically with the 3-night stay, people will arrive and have a moment to just relax and unwind. And then the following morning, we send them out to Isandlwana, arguably the greatest defeat that Britain would ever suffer in an entire colonial history, which is just across the river from us, 5 miles as the crow flies. But the river being what it is, it's a 35-kilometer drive to the bridge, Rorke Drift, and then back for lunch. Then a nice, lovely guided walk down to the graves of 𝐸𝐸𝐿𝐴. A lot of people are surprised to find that we are in our own 2,500 hectare game reserve, which does come as a pleasant surprise to people. Just aside from the spectacular vistas of the Buffalo River Gorge, there's a lot of plains game out on the game reserve. We don't have the big five with the exceptions of the elusive leopards, so people can explore the game reserve at leisure. Once that walk is concluded, the following morning is free. Our most popular activity seems to be the yellow route, which is a walk through the heart of the reserve up to the cliffs. People often refer to it as the ledge, and a spectacular view south of our property. Again, back for lunch and then out to the battlefield of Rorke Drift for the afternoon tour, which was the setting for the grand old classic movie Zulu, the 1964 classic, where 139 British soldiers, many of whom sick and disabled, prevailed in a battle that raged for 12 hours against 4,000 to 4,500 Zulus. Quite often people are emotionally exhausted after our battlefield tours. It's not dry history lessons, it's an emotional journey through the eyes of the soldiers who fought these battles and the warriors who fought the battles, specifically with Rorke Drift, which is often a tragic story in its own right.
Tell me, is there a particular story behind the name of the lodge?
Yes, the Fugitive Drift derives its name directly from the Battle of Isandlwana. It is the euphemistic crossing point where survivors of the Battle of Isandlwana on the British side were pursued down to the Buffalo River. There isn't really a drift there, to be perfectly honest. Of those 1,774 British soldiers at Isandlwana, only 55 Europeans managed to claw their way across the flooded Buffalo River at the Fugitive Drift. After that event, it was forever afterwards known as the Fugitive Drift.
Okay. And tell me, what do guests always rave about after they leave Fugitives Drift?
That's a tough one to put one's finger on. Quite often people have come to us from the big 5 game reserves, and more often than not, one of their favorite wildlife experiences is walking through the game reserve and walking through, and when I say through, literally through, the herds of giraffe or zebra. But obviously what we're known for is our battlefield tours, and I think people are often surprised to find just how engrossed they become in the story. Quite often people will remember their school days of battlefield stories, very dry and somewhat superficial, but I think often people come away from it profoundly moved, having a better understanding of South Africa's history, where we've all come from, and why we are the way we are today.
How do you make guests, especially the ones coming from overseas, how do you make guests feel at home?
First and foremost, it's what you've correctly said, guests, not clients. Right from the beginning, obviously, we're front and center to meet them as they arrive. Aside from that, every meal is hosted with the exception of breakfast. So one long table, guests can choose their own table if they like. But it's family style where every lunch and every dinner is hosted. Not too much, not too little. One doesn't want to be overbearing with one's guests, but it's a personal thing. My mother and stepfather also host every lunch as well. We get to know every one of our guests. They get to know us. We find out their stories and where they're from and what they're doing, what interests they have in these battlefields. And quite often it stems from the film Zulu, or some cases a familial connection to these battles, even in light of the tragic story of its history. It's a very peaceful place and people tend to sleep quite well here.
I was actually just chatting to a guest of mine, somebody who actually won a prize giveaway from another podcast, and his favorite rave about the prize giveaway that he experienced was that he's never slept like that in his own bed for the last 20 years. You're obviously always busy, but do you have a favorite space or place, should I say, that you go away and that you can breathe and let down and just chill by yourself?
That's a tough question. So the reserve itself being 25 square kilometers, there's a lot of little places to hide away. If I had to narrow it down, I'd probably say the ledge. A huge vista, this cliff that just drops away into the Buffalo River Gorge, and Africa rolls away at your feet to the distant horizon. The main feature on the far horizon is a mountain called 𝐸𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐴𝐴. There's a particular cliff on that mountainside where on a crisp winter's day after a flurry of snowfall, you can see snow on the Drakensberg Mountains and ships out at sea at Durban Harbour. It's this huge flat top mountain on the far horizon, and it's quiet, it's vast, it's rugged, it's gentle and harsh. It's everything that nature can be, and it is a magnificent place just to sit with a pair of binoculars and watch the world go by.
I can only imagine.
We'll have to change that.
Yeah, I'm coming around to see you, Doug. Tell me, what's been the most rewarding, if you can pick one, what's been the most rewarding experience you've ever had with a guest?
I'll encapsulate many experiences with many guests into one, if that's all right. There's a strange thing that tends to happen here with ex-soldiers who've been to war and seen and smelt the face of battle. Often they'll come here in their older years, and after our tours, after spending here a few days, there's almost a switch that goes off where they decide this is the place and now is the time to unburden themselves and talk about their own experiences. Often around the fire after dinner with a scotch in hand and their family sitting around, and to see these old war dogs get comfortable enough, open up and share their stories without judgment, without pressure. Just, this is where I tell my story. And I don't know what it is about this place or these battlefields that make these people feel that this is the place to talk about what they've been through. But the number of old soldiers we've had who have told stories here that their families, their wives, their children have never heard before, and to see them walking lighter because of it is an extraordinary thing, and a responsibility we don't take lightly.
That must be quite fulfilling, I should think, from your side. Kudos to you. Are there any sort of traditions, foods or events your guests fall in love with outside of the nostalgia of being there?
The main thing is every January we have a contingent of soldiers from the 1st Battalion, the Royal Welsh, the Descendant Regiment of the 24th Foot, who fought at both Isandlwana and Rorke Drift. There's annual pilgrimage to enjoy the Zulu royal family at Isandlwana in commemoration of that battle. That is often quite an event, 30 to 35 odd uniformed soldiers joining the Zulus at Isandlwana. You couldn't dream up a better image of peace and reconciliation going forward. And after all of that, on the anniversary, whichever date they've chosen for the commemoration, there'll be a full-blown mess dinner at Fugitive Drift with our guests, with the Royal Welsh officers, NCOs and soldiers. And it turns out to be quite an evening, and the following morning is often quite slow and painful. But it is a tradition that we've established, and it is growing, so much so that the Royal Welsh were invited to attend the coronation of King 𝐸𝐸𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴 growing that and establishing it and making it part of the fabric of this area.
Again, kudos to you, and I hope that the podcast will bring some further marketing for you guys. Good luck with that. Maybe I'll come as well and we'll share a scotch or two.
2029 is coming up shortly, and to the big 150th anniversary, the Royal Welsh want to send 150 soldiers and their band and colours and colour party to salute the Zulu monarch at Isandlwana, which promises to be an extraordinary affair.
That sounds like it's going to be very interesting and, like you say, extraordinary. So I'll try and diarize that, but I'm trying to take one day at a time.
Somewhat long-term planning.
Doug, I always like to ask my guests, can you tell me one particular person, and I know it puts you on the spot a little bit, but one particular person from your staff or community that really makes a big difference in your business?
The person to highlight there would be Gracie, runs the bar at Fugitive Drift, the purveyor of all things, all gin and tonics. And she's known as the amazing Grace to our guests. She has a unique ability to remember your name, work out what it is you like to drink, and bring it to you when you most need it, unprompted. She's famous for singing while working and will often be prevailed upon to hold little impromptu concerts at dinner by our guests. And so Gracie does stand out hugely. And yes, I'd probably say the amazing Grace.
There's a bit of a pun with that, but yeah, we're going to highlight that. What are your hopes for your property in the future?
It's a hope that is being realized as the sort of game reserve matures. We have honey badgers starting to make their way back, leopards starting to make their way back. And it's probably a pipe dream, but I would love to see ourselves, our neighboring reserve, 𝐸𝐸𝐵𝐵, Dresden and 𝐸𝐸𝐴𝐿 eventually consolidated into one enormous game reserve. But more than that, for the area itself, we have one of the highest unemployment rates in South Africa. And I would just love to see the battlefields and the natural realm start to benefit the community here in the ways that it obviously can, through employment, through investment, better roads, more tourists. I think that would be the ultimate satisfaction for me, just to see this place uplifted to the potential that it can be.
I think this is a bit of a story with the whole of South Africa in a way, isn't it?
Absolutely. Everything is a microcosm of the country. But I think everybody in this beautiful country of ours realizes what we could be and would love to be there. And we just need to work out how we do that.
You obviously mentioned that you're getting lots of ex-soldiers and that type of thing visiting on a yearly basis. But there's the other side of the coin to that, where there's a lot of people from the Northern Hemisphere that are still quite nervous about traveling, not just to South Africa, but Africa as a whole. What would you like to say to those people that have got that sort of issue with or nervousness about coming to our beautiful continent?
It's a tricky thing because if people have made their mind up and written off a place, it's very difficult to convince them to come. You can throw out all the facts and figures about it. You can manage your risk very easily in Africa, probably manage your risk more so in Africa than you can in the capitals of Europe. Unfortunately, the media loves a hysterical story and good news doesn't sell. But all I can hope is that the word of mouth of some people coming to this country. Remember, that lovely expression, once the dust of Africa gets into your boots, you'll never get it out. And I think that's very true, particularly with South Africa, with our history and culture of hospitality. I think we just have to convince people one at a time. We can put out as much facts and figures and route plans as we like. We can beat the drum of this country as much as we like. But I think the key factor is the tourist that is already here. The biggest marketing boon we have is the tourist who is already here. To show them an experience and give them an experience that they take home and pontificate around the dinner tables of Surrey or wherever they're from about what a wonderful time they had. And in so doing, plant the seed in somebody who's more nervous to come out. In that doing, one at a time, families at a time, we start to send out the message. And I think that message is getting there. You look at the tourist rates of the Western Cape and the Kruger Park area, they're pretty much at saturation point. The numbers are picking up in KZN. We're in a very unique position with a niche product where we don't feel it as much as others in terms of poor numbers. The proverbial last man standing in the battlefield regions. I would like more establishments in this area. The numbers are picking up as we start to catch the overflow. There's that huge development going on north of Durban. I think it's Club Med. That's obviously not so much our market, but you're going to probably start seeing the roads being upgraded and sorted out, the direct flights coming from across the world into King Shark International. And so I'm feeling very optimistic about the future. The police service in KwaZulu-Natal have been putting in an extraordinary effort in combating crime, and I do think they should be lauded for that. There's obviously a lot more work to do, but by God, they're doing it. And yeah, I'm more optimistic than most.
That's fantastic to hear, Doug. And I wish you well for the future. And yeah, I think Club Med's development, there'll be a lot of spin-offs from that.
Oh, completely.
As we're getting to the end of our chat, where can people find you online and follow your story?
So it's all on our website. If you Google Fugitives Drift Lodge, we'll pop up fugitivedrift.com, and there you'll be able to see from the directions folder to booking availability, activities lists, accommodation lists, and then of course into our charitable arm as well. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram if you just punch in Fugitives Drift. And yeah, so if you want to follow along the story of the lodge itself, that's probably the best place to do it. If you want to follow along the extraordinary work that the David Rattray Foundation and Kula are doing, look them up as well. They're also on all the social media sites. Doing heroic work in the education sector in this part of the world.
Now, I know that as part of the podcast, you've been kind enough to do a little bit of a prize giveaway. Can you tell us in your own words what it is that you're going to be giving away?
Absolutely. So it's two people. The giveaway of our flagship tours to Isandlwana and Rorke Drift. People want to come and hear the stories that make this place famous. Effectively an insignificant campaign adjacent to a remote and almost insignificant British colony. It's one of the most written about conflicts in British history. 22,000 people a year pre-COVID used to come to walk these battlefields, which are not really on the way to anywhere. And if any of your listeners want to know why, we'll tell them.
Just tell me a little bit about that prize giveaway, Doug. What does that encapsulate?
So the Isandlwana tour departs the lodge at 7:30. It's back at 1, obviously back for lunch. And then the Rorke Drift tour heads out at 3 o'clock and is back at 6. So it's effectively a full day with a bit of a breather in between. That obviously depends on how long they come to stay for. They can break those up and do them on alternative days or do it on the same day.
That's awesome. Thank you very much. Thank you to you and your team. I do appreciate having you on board and hearing more about your property and the area. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
That was Doug Rattray from Fugitive Drift Lodge and Guest House. Do not forget that prize giveaway. All the entry details can be found in the show notes of this episode, or head over to www.wildsunsets.travel/podcast. Tune in again next week when I'll be chatting to another great African tourism professional. My name is 𝐸𝐿𝐸, and consider this. A few years from now, you will not remember how much it cost you, but you will still remember the memories you made. Keep traveling.